Thanks for joining us for Season 7 of the Hospitality Hangout, a hospitality-focused podcast where the founders of Branded Strategic share their insights and bring technology and innovation leaders that are making things happen in the industry we love. My name is Jimmy Frischling, otherwise known as the Finance Guy. I'd like to welcome my partner, my brother from another mother, Mr. Michael Schatzberg, also known as the Restaurant Guy.
And thank you for that kind introduction, Jimmy. And to all those listening, feel free to call me Shatsy. Together, we are the personalities behind Branded Strategic Hospitality. We work at the intersection of hospitality, food service, technology, innovation, and capital. And Jimmy, I got to tell you, we are super excited. We're in Chicago. Big show, national restaurant show. We haven't been here in 3 years. 3 years we haven't been here. So we got a great show. We're super excited to be here. But Jimmy, I got to talk to you about one thing before we jump into this great show. And I got to tell you, Jimmy, there is a place out there in the metaverse, in the universe, in the world of high tech, okay? It's called the Branded Marketplace, okay? You go to the Branded Marketplace, and I got to tell you, Jimmy, you find every solution you could possibly need to operate your restaurant in this marketplace. So all I ask is everybody listening, go to thebrandedmarketplace.com, check it out, and you will find solutions that are solving problems. And Jimmy, if you want to get on the marketplace, all you got to do is just email me, Shatsy, marketplace@brandedstrategic.com. Or, Jimmy, I dare say, Shatsy@brandedstrategic.com. You can email directly to me, and we'll
directly to you.
Directly to me, and we'll get you on the marketplace in like 10 minutes. That's how fast. And by the way, Jimmy, people are probably like, hey, Shatz, do I have to have my credit card handy when I sign up for the marketplace? You know what I tell them, Jimmy?
No. Yes.
No, you don't have to have your credit card. And do you know why?
I can't imagine. This sounds very expensive. What does this cost?
No, it's free. That's why you don't need a credit card. It's absolutely free. So get on the marketplace, check it out, find all the greatest tech solutions. And I got to tell you, Jimmy, suppliers are going on there in a couple of weeks. Suppliers too.
I love
Jimmy,
it. By the way, Shad,
to you.
Before we launch into the episode, do me one favor. Read my mind, one word. What do I have to say in response to that great introduction?
Boom, baby, boom.
Just boom, not boom, baby, boom. Just boom, one word. Okay, boom, but boom's good. Boom. All right. Enough of that self-promotion that was sponsored by Chico's Bail Bonds. Let's jump into the episode. Our guest today is our friend, Mr. Dan Rowe, CEO of Fransmart and managing partner at The Kitchen Fund. And for a man that does not need an introduction, I'm going to give one anyway, because Fransmart's current and past franchise development portfolio brands have opened more than 5,000 restaurants worldwide and has facilitated franchise investments that have cumulatively generated over, pinky to the side of my lips, over $1 billion in revenues to date. Okay?
I got to say, Jimmy, by the way, he is the smartest person I've ever met in franchising. So Fransmart, it should be Dan Smart.
That's good. That might catch on. So with that in mind, let us bring Dan into the fold here, into the mix. Dan, we'll ask you to take the lead. Welcome to the podcast. Please give us a quick background about yourself and, of course, an introduction to Fransmart, please.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate that, and I like the Dan Smart. So I got to go protect that.
You got to footnote me on that. I trademarked it already, Dan.
Okay. Yeah. So for the last 30 years, we basically have been getting involved with early stage emerging brands, things that we think can be the next big thing. We want to get involved with them as early as we can, and it really started when I was in my early 20s. I bought a franchise for this crappy 6-unit bagel concept. They were based in DC, and we bought the rights for Denver, not knowing any better. Clear across the country, we're kind of on our own to figure it all out, and our stores were more successful than any of the stores in DC. And we helped grow that company from 6 stores to a couple hundred and then sold. One of my shops was right across from the first Chipotle. We tried talking him into franchising. I wasn't interested, but then we worked with Qdoba. So, it sort of kicked off this pattern of seeing these emerging brands. Every big chain started with one, and at an early stage, I got exposure to a couple of brands at the very nascent stages that were able to grow into the hundreds of millions. So we just have sort of found a home in that space, both on the franchise development side with Fransmart or on the investing side. Either Fransmart's writing angel checks or Kitchen Fund's writing grown-up checks.
That's awesome, Dan, and thanks for sharing that. Listen, before we take a deep dive, because I got to tell you, Jimmy, this guest, Dan, got a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about. Before we take a deep
we
dive,
booked him for a few hours.
this is going to be a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah,
Before we
didn't even know we booked him for 4 hours.
Oh,
We called
he
his
has no
assistant.
idea.
We cleared his calendar.
Before we talk about more about Fransmart, and you brought up the kitchen fund, there's a lot here. We want to learn a little bit more about what makes Dan Rowe tick. We're going to really get inside Dan Rowe. So you're into franchising, and you are the leader, clearly the leader of franchising in the whole world as far as I'm concerned. How'd you get into it? What was that? Were you always like, I love franchising? What can you share about your journey? How did it start? Take us back to 1975.
Dan, this is Schatzy's Fraser Crane moment. Schatzzy is listening.
I love it. So, it actually started when I was 18. I knew I wasn't going to college, and I wanted to figure out how to become successful. And I went to a motivational seminar. I went to a business seminar. It was this Anthony Robbins, back when he was,
Guy's
putting
very
on
tall,
shows.
by the way. I met him in an elevator, and huge hands.
Oh yeah, but I went to a show. There was only 100 people there, whatever. But the exercise for the show is, what do you want to do with your life? And at the end of the day, you sort of go through all these different machinations of that question. And what I came away from is, I want to get wealthy, helping people get wealthy. I want to get rich, helping people get rich. I didn't want to own a Ferrari at the expense of, talking you into something you're going to lose your home or whatever. And what I like about franchising is that's basically the model, is that, the franchisors only make money if the franchisees are making money, right? Franchisees are only making money if they've got a good team and their people are making money. And so it's a sort of thing. But I realized at a very early age, I was going to take a lot of pleasure getting wealthy, helping people get wealthy. And, honestly, I just find a lot of joy in this space. This is the kind of job that if I wasn't getting paid, this is exactly what I'd be doing.
By the way, that's freaking awesome. I love it. I got to tell you, we got to start doing more with Dan. By the way, hang around that guy.
I love his model, not getting paid.
You eat well, you drink well. There's a lot to learn here. Listen, Dan, I'm all about using analogies, for references. But I think when it comes to fun idioms, you may have got me beat. I'm going to quote you for a moment. When I asked about your view of franchising, you have a go big or go home mentality. Furthermore, you described the theory that when someone buys a single unit franchise, they've essentially bought themselves a job. But when someone becomes a multi-unit franchise operator, they bought themselves a career or an empire. I think that dovetails really nicely from what you just said about why you enjoy the space. But can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's better not to buy a single unit franchise. Like, if you're basically just buying yourself a job, think about it. When you have a job, you can quit your job. You can leave your job. If you decide that you're in an industry you don't like, you can just go get another job. If you've bought a franchise and that's basically how you're going to make your living, you've basically sunk your life savings into that. You've signed, if it's a restaurant or retail business, you signed a lease with all kind of contingent liabilities. The risk, there's just no way to me that makes sense. With franchising, though, with multi-unit franchising, I read this book, The Richest Man in Babylon, and it's the best 20-minute read you'll ever have as far for a business book. But the idea is, you want to invest in things that generate so much profit that you want to keep reinvesting that profit into more units, right? You get a compounded return. And so that's what I see in franchising. Like, if you just Google the list of the wealthiest franchisees, wealthy multi-unit franchisees, however you want to ask the question, you'll get pages and pages and pages of people that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially billions of dollars in this business. And a lot of them started without any money. So the business is a perfect, like, I know someone, I won't name names, but he started as assistant manager with a Taco Bell, parlayed that into plus 100 locations. He was a corporate hack, really good at operations, and wound up becoming a turnaround guy, became a small franchisee, would fix broken stores, turn around, and flip those, and then has accumulated a lot. I know people that have done that in 15 different brands. So it's the ultimate wealth builder to me. If you get into I know people at Five Guys, they build stores, especially early on with a brand. When you get into a brand when they're young, they're just less expensive to build. You're more likely to be able to leverage conversions and stuff like that. you get your money back fast, and then you roll that into another store. And at some point, those self-fund multiple, locations, making millions of dollars. Now you've got an asset. I mean, one, you're making way more than you would be making if you buy yourself a job. And two, you've got an asset now that you can sell for a life-changing amount of money. And there's so many investors out there. Like if you're a good operator, there's so much capital out there looking for a place to invest. So, I think that this business, I think wealth in this industry, rewards good, strong, hungry operators.
That is awesome, Dan. And I got to tell you, you touched a little bit about Five Guys. I mean, this is one of your earliest brands. And this is like America's fastest growing restaurant chain. I mean, Five Guys burgers and fries is just unbelievable. I don't know how many units you guys have today, but they're all over the place. They're amazing. Let's talk about a couple other brands. Halal Guys, Taffer's Tavern, the Brooklyn Dumpling Shop you guys just opened up, I think your first or second store, Savannah Seafood Shack, another one. What do you look for in an emerging brand before you add them to portfolio? What kind of things are you looking for? What kind of brands? Is it a specific type of food? Is it in a certain area? I mean, what kind of things are you looking at?
I mean, a lot of it is unit economics because, high volume tells you customers like the concept. Customers vote with their wallet. So if they've got really, really good sales, that's a good indication. The restaurants themselves have to make enough profit that franchisees want to keep reinvesting free cash into more units. Then we look at other things too. We look at what's the landscape? So when I got to Halal Guys, I had opened 50 restaurants across American brands in the Middle East. And every time I'm over there, I'd fall in love with the local street food. And it dawned on me, there's 1.5 billion Muslims and there's no brand. There's no restaurant brand. There's no brand. I could come back to America, go to any Starbucks or Panera and ask the average customer to name me one Middle Eastern singer, actor, apparel company, tech company, car company, and you get crickets. You've got 1.5 billion Muslims. The food's amazing. Middle Eastern food, Mediterranean food's amazing. And I just saw this. It's like, oh my God, I just sort of, there's a huge opportunity if somebody gets this right. And there's plenty of Middle Eastern restaurants making food for Middle Easterners. And we said, look, if you can take this Middle Eastern food and make it safe and approachable for the Starbucks crowd or the Panera crowd, you're going to have a monster on your hand. And so, that's exactly what we did. We make people feel really safe, really smart trying the food. And within only a couple of years, including COVID, that chain's already 100 units on its way to 500 units. And it's the fastest growing Middle Eastern restaurant concept in the world. But we're growing, same thing.
And that's a New York brand, right? Food truck in New York?
It's carts. They didn't even have the money for a food truck.
It wasn't a food truck, a cart, right by the museum or something, wasn't it, in the Upper West?
Carts. Yeah, they were push carts. Now, in all fairness, they were push carts that were so popular, there was a line down the block. So I had nothing to do with that. But to help them turn that into, what I hope is going to be a household brand, that was just sort of, the being at the right place at the right time with the right idea. But going back to Taffer's is John Taffer's, this world famous person. We're doing the next generation of casual dining. So we have this very, very high volume, full service restaurant, tavern restaurant concept that doesn't have a hood. So we address the issues like what's the big plague in casual dining, and a lot of it had to do with economics and it takes too many employees to run these places and all this kind of stuff. And we'd ask employees, what do you guys hate doing? And they said, we hate prep, we hate cleaning. And so we dealt with this. We basically engineered a concept from the get-go that's hoodless and ventless, very, very, very high volume, but it uses a technique called sous vide. So it's the French cooking technique. It's a super advanced technique, but we were able to talk the biggest co-packer in the world into making all of our own specific proprietary items for us sous vide so that they all show up at every single restaurant. It's perfect every time. And, he's doing, really high sales, like maybe 2 times the sales of a typical casual dining restaurant. And then you look at Savannah Seafood. They disclose their numbers in their FDD. They're 1,800 feet. I think they do $2.5 million in sales, so well over $1,000 a foot.
That's a big number.
Over 25% profit margin. They disclose all that, and it's and so you sit there and you're like, okay, well, no one's done anything new nationally in seafood. There's a concept that's from a cool place with unbelievable unit economics. And we just threw it out there. We threw it out to our network of franchisees, and we already have like 10 bites. 10 of our franchisees across the country that are looking for non-competing expansion vehicles like this. They basically really, really, really like this concept. So economics, we look for runway. We look for really authentic brands. I don't want a me too, like because a brand, because something's successful, I don't want to get in with someone who's jumping on a bandwagon. So I want authentic concepts with real soul. And but mostly it's unit economics. And do we think we can grow up from a couple to a couple hundred? Is there room? Are you still early enough in the cycle that franchisees, like when I sold out of, I was a partner in a couple of Five Guys franchises. We sold at a very, very high multiple, much higher than the multiples are now. So, you want to get it going as big as you can, as fast as you can.
Dan, I love all that. And I got to tell you, in case anyone takes a snippet out of this segment, Dan did not say he doesn't support the Me Too movement. That's not what he said. He said he doesn't want a Me Too brand. Just want to be clear. We don't want Dan misquoted on the episode. I want to stick with unit economics because as the finance guy of this dynamic duo, I'd like to think I know at least a little bit or two about investing, and especially about the importance of a small or emerging business being attractive enough to attract capital, to attract investors, to take the risks associated with high risk, high reward. You touched on the unit economics. Can you share a little bit more about the importance of unit economics and the role this plays in your decision-making, process? I think you really kind of nailed it with the Savannah Seafood Shack, but how much do you look into that, and how important is that in your decision-making?
Well, it's critical. So the unit economics have to be so much better that it'll get attention. Can't just be as good like when I was growing Five Guys, you're growing Halal Guys. The numbers can't just be as good as all the other players out there. They have to be a lot better. So, and look at a brand like Sweetgreen. I mean, Sweetgreen, for as small as they are, had a ridiculously high valuation because those stores cost $800,000 to open. They did, $3 million in sales with a 20% four-wall margin, a 75% four-wall ROI. So it's like, everyone in the world wants that. And then on our brands, like Five Guys or Halal Guys, the ROIs can be months, not years. So we're looking for brands. If we're going to get involved, it's got to be something with less than a 2-year payback. They have to have better than 50% ROI, because we sell to people that already own Paneras or Five Guys or whatever, and they're not going to stop building those unless you have an economic, sort of an economic model that's so much more compelling that they want to jump in.
Dan, I love that and appreciate it. And I love the fact that you're looking to get an ROI, not in years, as you just said, certainly within 2 years, but you're talking in some cases with the Halal Guys getting it done in months. And that is exceptional. I want to shift gears a little bit and jump into the Kitchen Fund. Much like the work we do at Branded, the Kitchen Fund is also offering both connected and supportive capital to restaurant brands as industry experts. What's new in the world of Kitchen Fund, and what role is technology playing at the Kitchen Fund in terms of your portfolio?
It's the driver of, it's basically the driver of profit. So any and all tech tools to drive revenue, to lower costs, to basically make it easier to manage the restaurants, to optimize your labor, like it's a big deal. But, Kitchen Fund is bigger. Now we're on Kitchen Fund 2, so it's a bigger fund writing bigger checks. It's not dealing with, the super emerging brands. The last investment that we made was in the largest acai producer in the country, Sambazon. And so there's acai. They had one location and they did over $100 million worth of sales through grocery and wholesale. And we see that as a great place to park capital. And then we're also helping coach them into growing their wholesale business much, much, much bigger, but then taking their one retail unit and turning that into a 500 plus unit chain. So that's an example where we could put capital, and we're smart investors, we're value add investors. We're able to help these guys everywhere. This morning, we're an investor in a tech company, an AI company, and I connected them with the biggest franchisees in the country. And it's like, we make an investment in these brands, and we're also able to plug them into our ecosystem. And so that's just sort of where we're looking to make good, smart investments and then leverage our ecosystem for more upside.
Love it. Love it. Listen, lastly, before we move on, when we think of the future of food service and what's the next trend to take over the industry, there was a lot of talk out there about NFTs and the metaverse. I mean, it reminds me of when we were talking about cloud kitchens and dark kitchens just a couple of years ago. Now everyone's talking about NFTs and the metaverse. And so let's just talk a little about NFTs and the metaverse and its role in hospitality. I know one of your brands, Halal Guys, we just talked about, which is, we love it here in New York. I mean, you walk by one of those Halal Guys, man, the smell is just, it's off the chain. I know the Halal Guys are offering loyal customers who've dined with you guys, 100 times, whatever the number is, the Century Club, which includes an exclusive NFT from the original food cart like we talked about. So talk to me a little about NFTs. Do you think NFTs are the future for loyalty? And let's touch a little bit about the metaverse and what is this role in restaurants?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Excellent.
It's one of the best, most honest answers I've heard in a long time on the topic.
Somebody told me I got to do an NFT, and I did it.
Yeah, no, I'm as curious as anyone to see how this is going. But it's sort of like Bitcoins or even looking at ghost kitchen and dark kitchens. It's like just seeing how that's mutated, and the original business thesis. They're all on a different strategy now. So it's like, I'm not really sure how NFTs are going to go, but I'm excited to see.
Yeah, Jimmy and I had coffee this morning, and we were talking a little about with one of our friends who, he's been in the space for quite a few years in the blockchain and crypto. And we started talking, and I'm really just trying to get smarter on it. I agree with you. It's very, very early, and we are trying to educate ourselves and really get smarter on the subject matter. Listen, let's switch. Let's go to our next segment. Okay. The next segment is talking back. And it turns out that on the podcast, yes, Jimmy likes to talk a lot. I like to talk a lot. We talk a lot on the podcast, but you know what? We decided let's give the guest an opportunity to talk a little bit more. And nothing is off the table. So we'd like you to ask us a question, anything you want. Dan, the mic is yours. Talking back. What question you got for Jimmy and I?
I want to hear from you guys, your sense of the trends in the next couple of years. I feel like I'm in a bubble. Like I just went to the food on demand for the first time, and I get there and it looks like you guys are 100 times more plugged into all things pop culture, restaurant culture, everything culture. And I want to hear from you guys. Like, what do you guys see is the next trend, and where do you think that I should be focusing my energy if I want to get out in front of the next trend fast?
Ooh, a fantastic question.
Wow, no, it is a good question. I mean, I'm going to take a first stab at it, Jimmy, because I know you like to always take in the anchor role, the better answer. But so I give the first answer, and then you massage to make it a far better answer. But I got to tell you, I mean, certainly we are curious about what we just talked about: NFTs, metaverse, blockchain. Payments is a very to me, it's a pain point for restaurant operators. If you look at a P&L and you say, well, outside of the COGS and the labor and of course the occupancy charges, really it's repairs and maintenance, and it's that whole credit card processing is a big line item for a lot of operators. So really, very curious to see how blockchain and crypto, et cetera, is going to start working its way through adoption into restaurants and customers being able to use that as a source of payment and really reduce a lot of the operational costs for operators, which can exceed, it could be 3.5%, 4% of your sales on that. So that's one area. And the other, area we continue to look at and explore is the cloud kitchen, the ghost kitchens, the smaller footprint of the restaurant being designed much more for the off-prem as that continues to grow. So really flipping things around from 70% seats and 30% back of the house. It's almost completely reversed, where it's 70% back of the house and almost no seats, with lots of opportunities to get food out. So continuing to look at things in that space. So those are just a couple of the areas that we're very excited about.
Schatz, that was awesome. I feel like you just did your best Dennis Rodman and boxed me out. You talked about
Oh,
NFTs.
come on,
You talked
Jimmy.
about you talked about NFTs, payments, repairs, and ghost kitchens, cloud kitchens. To Dan's question, you
That
covered
was
a lot.
the intro for you. That was the intro for you to
covered a
now.
lot. You covered a lot.
You articulated better.
I'll just touch on one thing because I actually think, Shats, those are some of the trends that are on our mind, and we're seeing. I'm going to play a little Donnie baseball.
Sustainability, Jimmy.
Oh, good. You even got that one in there. My answer with respect to more near term, but a change I expect to see. Back when I was a much younger man, we used to eat at home. My mom was cook food, and we eat, and you get what was served. And now my friends who have kids of a certain age, they're all ordering in from different apps, and while the meal might be at home, it's a very different experience. Expanding on the GK or the cloud kitchen space, I think a lot of restaurants are masking or somewhat hiding that they're testing this out and trying it. And our belief is that the excess kitchen capacity should be utilized not just fully and will continue to be, but that more and more restaurants will be proud of it and will no longer do that kind of stealth. So our expectation is the next 2 years, you're going to see a lot of brands and a lot of menus have more diversity than I think right now it exists, as I said, but a full service casual restaurant is not marketing to their guests in the store what's going on in the virtual and digital space. And my sense is those two markets are going to converge, and you're going to see a lot more. Again, different brands, different menu items, all within the same footprint, and no longer hiding in the shadows. But in fact, you're going to see these restaurants bragging about the diversity they're offering, because I think the consumer at the end of the day is who we need to satisfy, and the consumer is going to love that when they realize that they can really enjoy far more granularity or far more diversity, I should say, to the menu offering than exists today. That's my 2 cents. That might have been one of the longest answer shots we ever gave to a question that one of our guests asked us. What do you think?
It was. Yeah. Well, that's because a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. There's a lot to talk about.
A lot of exciting things.
A lot of really cool stuff happening.
And Jimmy, I agree with that. Like, that was my takeaway from the food on demand too, is I was surprised how many people are already leveraging their own excess capacity.
Yep, but really they're hiding it still. And that's not my domain, but to me, I think it's going to come out from behind the woodwork, come out of the woodwork, and people are going to be proud to have those brands in their stores, proud to have those items.
Yeah. Yep.
But yes, excess capacity we really love, and when it comes to the capex that's associated with the building of commercial kitchens, I admit that's something that Brandon's been staying away from. We don't love the big capex. We love the utilization of excess capacity. We think that's just really smart and will deliver a very attractive return on investment. But I digress. Let us move into the newest segment. First time in 7 seasons that I got a new segment. So clearly, the producer, our producer Julie Zucker, cast a favorable light on me.
Felt a little bad for you, Jimmy. Felt bad.
Felt bad for me. Felt bad.
And you also complained to her. I
was bribed her. Anyway, listen, I recently shared a restaurant story with a few members of our team. I said, one of my favorite stories, and Julie and the crew liked it. And they said, you know what, we should be asking our guests about funny story, their own funny and interesting story that maybe they had as a guest, or maybe they had as one of their own experiences. So rather than me kind of telling a story, but I got to tell you, I got a lot of them, but it's not about me. It's about our friend Dan Rowe. Dan, can you share a favorite restaurant moment about maybe one of your brands with our listeners?
There are a few, but a couple that come to mind is I fly in and out of Teterboro, and we have a halal guys right by Teterboro, and I'm standing in line, and all of a sudden I'll look behind me and there's Shaq, or I was in there another time, I look in front of me and there's Mike Tyson or something like that, and it just cracks me up. It's like, this little concept I started working with when it was a cart, all of a sudden, it's got these celebrities in the store. And then later that day, there's a picture of that celebrity in that store on Instagram that's being spun. It's just funny how the world works. But, I don't know. It's almost surreal to watch what happens with these brands.
Shaq, he just gave it to you. There it is. Come on, Shaq, say it. Shaq at Halal Guys at Teterboro. Shaq, that was...
Boom!
I was going breaking news.
Big Chicken?
The Mr. Big Chicken himself is hanging out at Halal Guys. How good is that?
Mr.
I'll
Big
take
Chicken
it.
knows a thing or two about Middle Eastern food, Jimmy.
Yes. By the
we'll
way,
take
if you're online behind Mike Tyson, just take it easy, okay? Cool it. Let's not instigate anything. He's a
Yeah,
gentleman.
don't bother him on a
Don't
flight
bother.
either.
Don't bother him on a
When
flight.
he's on a plane, don't
Yeah.
bother the champ on a plane.
I agree. Let him do his business.
Don't try and take a selfie with the champ. Leave the champ alone.
All right, listen. We want to go into our crystal ball moment, a chance where we ask our guests to put on their Kreskin and Miss Cleo hat and predict the future. The future. Dan, how do you see restaurants and dining 2 years from now in relation to hospitality and technology?
I think you're going to see brands really, I mean, first of all, technology is going to be pervasive, and the technology that we use to interact with restaurants are going to be as friendly as Facebook or something like that.
Yes.
But the other part is that a brand that survives needs to feed people when they want to be fed, where they want to be fed, and how they want to be fed. The whole original thesis for ghost kitchens and dark kitchens were that restaurants weren't good at off-premise or they weren't good at that stuff. And clearly that's changed in large part because of COVID. But I think nowadays, it's all about brand. People want a brand. They want it when they want it, where they want it, and how they want it. And the brands are going to figure that out. Look at what I just read about Famous Dave's and Applebee's doing drive-thrus. It's like, who would have thought?
Who would have thought, right?
Date night.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. What's up is down. What's in is out. What's black is white. I mean, it's everything is converging.
I think Schatz is turning turtle. Schatz is turning turtle. Mary Poppins returns. Up is down, down is out. All right, listen, that's our show. We're all good. I mean, there's nothing left to cover. Oh, I'm kidding you, Schatz. I'm kidding.
For the branded, we've got the greatest segment right now, Dan, and we are so excited to have you on it. The branded quickfire. And Dan, I'm going to ask you 5 lightning round questions. I don't want you to think too hard. Just first thing that comes into your mind, just blurt it out. Are you ready for the branded quickfire?
Sure. Let me have it.
Favorite Saturday Night Live skit?
It's got to be Cowbells, Christopher Walken.
I need more cowbell. It's a great one.
Anything Walken does. Where are you getting dinner from tonight?
Oh, my mom and sister are in town. Tonight we're going to Roy's in Scottsdale.
Nice.
Roy's, full service, yeah.
Gotta love Roy's.
Love
Is that
Roy's.
over at the Marriott Desert Ridge?
Exactly, right by the
Oh, that's our place, Jimmy. That's our place, baby.
Yeah, Dad, tell him Schatz. Tell him you know Shatsy, and they'll say, who? What? What?
Or they'll say, Shatsy, you can't eat here. All right, favorite food city in the world?
Oh, I got 2, Mexico City and Rome.
Nice. Winner.
Tell you, I mean, those are winners. Favorite place to travel?
Oh, I got 2 of those too. My 2 favorite places, my 2 happy places are Maui and Amsterdam.
Maui and Amsterdam. Is there any connection there? I'll leave it to your imagination.
Completely different from each other, but there's nothing like either place. Even all the other places in Hawaii, like nothing's like Maui, and then the rest of Europe, it's like I love it all.
I got to tell you, I love Maui and I love Amsterdam. I got to tell you, if you were to challenge Jimmy or I to a game of mini golf, what are your better odds of beating?
Whoever I can get to drink the most.
Well, that'd be Jimmy. That'd be.
I was gonna say that may not be descriptive enough, but yeah,
go.
I think it's probably that's probably a fair answer. That's probably true. Open bar and mini golf, nothing's better than that.
Yeah, we were at Top Golf. We were at Top Golf over in Vegas. I'll tell you, we had a blast. My first time being at Top Golf, we had a blast over there.
I didn't pick up a club. I was enjoying the F&B.
It is. I love it. But yeah, all right, Jimmy. I think you win.
No, I lost.
Oh, you lost.
Sorry. I think by choosing me to have the better odds of beating, I think he was saying you're the winner and I'm the not winner. But I get do I get a participation trophy? I hope so. I hope I do. All right, listen.
Yes, everybody's a winner
gets
on
a
the
participation
podcast.
trophy. Dan, we want to thank you so much for joining us on the Hangout and for all your great insights. I got to tell you, I know one of our former guests is going to be really jealous. That's Sterling Douglas, because Sterling, you just fell one further notch down the. You got to raise your game a little bit, Sterling. But no, we want to thank you for for all your hard work, Dan, in support of this industry, not just during one of this challenging time, but really for all the work you and your team have done. If you want to get in touch with Dan directly, you can email the podcast team at podcast@brandedstrategic.com. We'd be happy to make the introduction. As our listeners know, we stopped giving out personal phone numbers and email addresses in the middle of season 1 when it was frowned upon. And to our listeners, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to tune in with us. We know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and the fact that you continue to subscribe and listen and expand our network is something we really do appreciate. Please join us next week as we welcome our friend and guest and our partner, Mr. Daniel Meth, CEO of Ingest, for a deep data dive. That's the triple D next week with Daniel Meth.
Love the data. Love the
deep data dive.
Love it.
And finally,
hey, just wait. Before we sign off, Jimmy, let me just let Dan get a chance. Dan, if everybody wants to learn a little bit more about Fransmart, where do we go? Fransmart.com?
Fransmart.com. Smart franchise.
Fransmart.com. Check it out. I got to tell you, Dan's got some incredible brands. So if you're out there looking for a franchise opportunity, you got to speak to Dan because he's the guy to do it. He's got great franchise out there. And like he said, you could work for someone else or you can be your own boss and start a franchise. And I got to tell you, Dan's crushing it in the world of franchise.
We're the world leader on our podcast today. How good is that? How good is that? Hey, Schatz, I got one word for you. Boom. Okay. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of the exciting guests we have coming up in the future. So from Jimmy Frischling, your finance guy, with appreciation and thanks to our friend Dan Rowe, I'm passing it back to Shatsy.
Jimmy, it's great to be in Chicago. We love it. Thanks, everybody. This is Shatsy, a.k.a. Restaurant Guy, signing off. Hospitality Hangout. And thanks, Dan Rowe, the franchising genius from Dan Smart.
Thanks for
Go Dan Smart.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
DanSmart.com.